Hello. Some decisions aren't too hard to make. Like, for instance, caramel or vanilla? I think I'm going to go for caramel. And I thought I'd just talk to you today about politics. Not my political views, but more how politics should be, how we should use politics. In real life, not many things are black and white. They're more shades of grey. So, this isn't scripted at all. Just thought I'd have a chat. I've done one of these once before and it seemed to go down quite well. I mean, there are divisive subjects, arguments. The ones that spring to mind are things like guns, abortion, hunting, things like that. As I said, I am not discussing my personal views, just politics in general. Because my opinion about politics is I should be able to argue my politics and my views with anyone else, and I do, no matter how different, and then step away from it. We've got a very good friend who has extremely strong views on one wing of a subject, whereas I have 180 degree opposite views, and we have argued about it. We've talked about it, discussed it. But then, right, we finished that subject. How's your brother? And did you go and, we just carry on as normal. The fact that we're 180 degrees apart on that subject doesn't and shouldn't affect anything else. We managed to keep that totally separate. With those subjects like hunting, abortion and guns, and with something like hunting, it can vary from no hunting at all under any circumstances whatsoever, through to, I suppose, going out and shooting dead everything you can possibly see and think of. But there's somewhere in between. The same with abortion, which obviously is a highly emotive subject, but you got the full range from no abortion, never, ever, ever under any circumstances, no matter what, through to, I suppose, pregnant again, I'll go and have an abortion. There's going to be somewhere in between. And the same, yet again, with guns and gun control. That's more an issue in America, but I suppose potentially you could have someone on one side who wants absolutely zero control on guns. Anyone can get them as many as they want for whatever reason, no matter if they've got a criminal record or not, if they've got mental health issues or not, if they intend to do harm or not, through to someone who thinks you should never, ever, ever have a gun, not for any reason at all, not sport, not hunting, nothing. Somewhere in between, there's a compromise. So, for the sake of argument, some criminal record checks, make sure someone hasn't got mental health problems, but perhaps you limit them to X number of guns. Or they're only allowed for certain things. The point is, between the two extremes of absolutely zero controls and 100% total ban, there's going to be somewhere where people agree. No, it does not mean everyone gets what they want, but it's something people can live with. So someone who wants zero guns will say, well, okay, we've not got zero guns, but they're controlled enough so I think they're relatively safe. And on the other side, someone who wants zero controls thinks, well, I can still get a gun, and so can everyone else, as long as they've not got these criminal records or mental health problems or whatever, somewhere. I'm not saying where that line should be. I don't know where that line should be. I'm not particularly pro or anti-gun. I've used guns when I was in the States. I had fun. So, there's got to be a solution somewhere. And that comes down to politics, talking about these things, the pros and cons, and coming to some sort of agreement. You get people from all positions on the political spectrum, from extreme left through to extreme right, and pretty much anywhere on that spectrum you're going to get people who are good and people who are bad, people with good ideas and people with bad ideas. Take something like health. In the UK, we've got the National Health Service, so it's free to use at point of need, but we all pay tax for it. Other countries have different systems, or virtually no system. Again, what is right? That's for each country and each people to decide. Because you've got a full spectrum. You could have healthcare is only ever available to those who can pay for it privately, through to get as much as you want, as often as you want, for free, which is rather expensive. Somewhere between the two is going to be something that's acceptable to both sides. It's actually quite similar to sort of unemployment support and various benefits. You could argue the case, why should I pay anything towards supporting anyone else? I'll just look after myself, they should look after themselves. Through to people who believe there should be total support for anyone. Once again, there'll be position somewhere in between the two. I mean, total support for anyone, an unemployment benefit that's equal to paid employment with no limits or whatever, that might be very nice, but it's also very, very expensive. And why should I pay for someone to live the life of Riley without putting in any effort on their own? On the other hand, there are people who can't work and need some support. So is it right? Should I pay some? Is it the decent thing to pay some? Again, somewhere between the two opposing extremes, there'll be an acceptable position. And you've also got that with things like education, private or public or none, or home or whatever. Immigration, do you only allow true asylum seekers? Do you encourage a number of people in? Do you have a position where you don't encourage, but if someone applies, you deal with them? Do they meet certain points and so on? Again, each country's needs are going to be different, and people have differing views upon it anyway. And you're going to have to talk it out. You're going to have to discuss the pros and cons, what your country can afford, not afford, what your country wants and doesn't want. So these decisions are all left to politicians, and you hope that they're reflecting your views. You vote for politician X because you believe politician X is going to, again, let's say with the immigration, is going to uphold and push for your particular views. No guarantees, but that's the general idea. Then you've got the people on the other side. So why do they go into politics? I would say they go into politics because they want to do good. That's anyone, from your left-wing trade unionists who wants to support the trade union members as strongly as possible, for them to get as good a deal as possible, through to people on the right who perhaps are more interested in the financial status and viability of the country. But they do it. Each person does it because they think that they're doing the right thing. That they think that they have the solution to society's problems or difficulties, or they want to guide society in a certain way. So the fact that Joe Bloggs over there feels differently about hunting or unemployment benefit and support than I might do doesn't make them a bad person. It makes them a person with differing views. And that isn't and shouldn't be a problem. It becomes a problem if someone's doing politics purely because they want power. That's a different issue. But the general reason people go into politics is because they want to change things for what they believe is the better. I've met a couple of politicians. I didn't actually agree with either of them, but they were both really nice guys, and I could see that what they believe for the best of reasons. So I can't criticise them, and they were both really decent people. There's nothing wrong, absolutely nothing wrong with disagreeing with people. Hey, it's healthy. If I disagree with you, we can talk about it, we can get frustrated with each other, we can argue and shout, and oh, you've persuaded me. You're quite right, I didn't think of that. I changed my position. And that's brilliant. On the other hand, I'm hoping, with whatever subject, I'd be able to change your position if it's an opposing one, and I would hope that you, as my opponent, would be open to evidence, open to argument, open to persuasion, and maybe change your position. Maybe we both move a little bit and hit that middle ground we can both accept. Compromise. So disagreeing with the other side is fine. What you mustn't do is demonise the other side. If the other side is demonised, how can you compromise? How can you compromise with what you believe is the devil? How can you discuss things, move forward, and come to some sort of arrangement with the devil? Now, as soon as you demonise, you've got a problem, because you've drawn a red line that you won't cross, because you're not going to deal with the devil. But it's actually not the devil. It's someone just like you or me who happens, for whatever reason, for education, the way they're brought up or whatever, but they happen to have a different opinion on that particular subject. They could just as easily turn around and demonise you. Say that you are of the devil. You are evil. You've got your left wing or right wing view because you're evil, which isn't fair. You know why you have the political views on various subjects you have, and I would hazard a guess it's for damn good reasons. They may not be reasons I agree with, but that's fine. Where there is a big problem, and it comes in, I think, with that demonisation, is when anyone tries to mix religion with politics. I don't think that should ever happen. First of all, I'll make clear I am not religious, I am atheist, but absolutely people have the right to hold their own personal religious belief. I have no problem with that. Where I have a big problem is if someone tries to force their own personal religious belief on others, on me. If someone holds just mild religious beliefs. Oh, I like to go and have a bit of a sing and a pray on a Sunday. It makes me feel better. That's pretty harmless. It doesn't cause a problem with anyone. But where people become sort of religious activists, using religion and God to justify a position, they can't look at, consider, or move towards the opposition figure without calling into question their entire religion and their God. Now, if we took one of those subjects, let's say abortion, someone who is religious may hold a particularly strong position on that. That's fine. And again, I have no problem with them arguing, I'm presuming, against abortion, giving evidence of why they think it's bad, why they think it's bad for society, why they think it shouldn't happen, and so on. But they can't turn around and say, "'cause God said so." It would be all right if you could say, "Look, here's God. Here's proof, 100% proof, here's God. What do you say, God?" God says, "I'm against it." That's fair enough. I think most people, if God came to them and actually stood in front of them and said, "Do this or don't do that," you're going to listen. But all we've got is that religious person or group of religious people saying that their religious belief is this or that. As I said, it's fine, have that religious belief, but you can't force one religious belief onto other people. I'm just remembered a story my mum told me, actually. She used to work in a college, and there was a big college dinner, and there were these two guys sat opposite each other. One was Hindu and one was Muslim, and they chose their meals. One had a nice plate of beef and the other had a nice plate of pork, and the two of them just glared at each other because each of them apparently was blaspheming against the other's belief. If you don't want to eat pork or beef or whatever, if you believe your religion teaches that you shouldn't, that's fine. But the fact that the guy opposite you likes a nice bit of pork and apple sauce or beef stew or whatever it was, you've got to accept it. If you don't accept that other people are entitled to other opinions, you're okay until the person with the other opinion is in a position of power over you. Then your beliefs, wants, needs get ridden roughshod over, and you end up with nothing. That's why the only way is to compromise. I don't eat pork. I have no problem if you do. You don't eat beef, but you don't mind if I do. That's fine. That's the only way we can live together. And it's the same with blasphemy in general. There's a thing I've seen in the news about some Nike shoes or trainers that actually say Air Max on the sole, but apparently part of that text looks as though it says Allah in script, and people are demanding that these shoes are withdrawn and it's blasphemy and so on. Well, if the guy who designed that logo deliberately did that to upset others, I could understand. But I don't know, for instance, what the word Allah looks like in script. If I had seen those shoes, it would have meant nothing to me. I'm not blaspheming. How can I blaspheme if I don't believe, well, that there's a God at all, let alone your particular God? And I'm not having a go at Islam here. I'm talking about any religion. Because these religions, although they share the same roots, things like Christianity, Judaism and Islam, they share roots. They're different. They do not reconcile with each other, at least not 100%. At most, only one of them can be correct. I'm getting a bit sidetracked into religion. Perhaps I'll leave that for another time. But my point is, don't mix religion with politics, because it's not something that can be measured and evidenced. It's feeling, faith, belief, which is not the same as politics, and one individual's feeling, faith, beliefs should not be used to override another person's. So I said about compromise and so on, because there's very few things that really are black and white, as I said earlier. The one obvious one I can think of is Brexit. Again, I'm not going to argue the toss for or against Brexit, but with something like that, you're either in or out. You're part of the European Union or you're not. There is no middle ground. However, there is compromise once you're out, if you're out, in that you can then argue and try and agree how closely aligned you should be, but you won't be in anymore. So with things like that, a decision has to be made. You're either going to sit on the fence forever, or you decide to stay in or to go out. And that obviously is where democracy comes in. When there is no other way, the only way you can decide what to do is to have a vote on it, unless you have a dictatorship. Now, the chances of a benevolent dictator are so close to zero, it's not even worth thinking about. I suppose it's possible, but it's extremely unlikely. So unless you want to be dictated to, the only other way is democracy. Democracy means you do not get what you want. Not always, not 100%. Sometimes you might get most of what you want. On occasion, you may get all of what you want, but most times you won't. But then neither will the person with the opposing views. So you just have to live with it. You try and persuade them, try to move them closer to your view, and they'll do the same to you. But when all is said and done, once you reach the point of making that democratic decision, you have to stick with it. You have to support it. There will always be an option in the future to change things. For instance, with Brexit, there is always the option of reapplying at a later date. Whatever the benefits or disbenefits of that are, whatever the costs, however much we may or may not have lost by coming out and going back in again, there is always that as a possibility. You have to change hearts and minds, persuade the opposition to your way. If you can't, then you carry on living with the democratic decision. The alternative is damage to all the democratic institutions of a country. It's degradation in trust in the way the system operates. I mean, these things, they might sound, well, that's not good, but it's not the end of the world. But the problem is, it can be. If faith in the democratic institutions, faith in the way the state works, the faith in the laws of your country and how they're upheld, if all those things are knocked so badly that nobody trusts them, you end up with one solution, one way of resolving the differences in whatever the particular political argument are. That's civil war. And nobody really wins that. Not at all. So I think that's it. I think basically democracy is the answer, but only if you accept you're not going to win all the time. Otherwise, at some point, you've got disaster. And as I said, not everything is black or white. When did those two change their opinions, eh? Hope you've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed this. Take care. Stay sensible. I want to give massive thanks to each and every one of my supporting patrons. Thank you.
Shut up and sit down.